and accepted the argument that Chinaman had gone out of fashion and was now a derogatory term and therefore offensive. The OED said that they would consider revising their entry. Crow was encouraged enough to fire off letters to the compilers of other English-language dictionaries in America, such as Merriam-Webster, encouraging them to alter their entries too. What was without doubt the most delightful, the most carefree, the most lyrical interval of my youth, the nearest thing to a Lotus Eater's dream that a young woman brought up the right way could expect to know. Wallis, Duchess of Windsor, The Heart Has Its Reasons. Introduction. The many biographies of Wallis Simpson have tended to focus almost exclusively on the love affair that forced the constitutional crisis of the abdication of King Edward VIII in December 1936 and the challenging years of exile for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor that followed. The earlier part of Wallis's life, her first disastrous marriage to Commander Win Spencer, her escape from that relationship, and the pivotal years she spent in China across 1924 and 1925 have been the subject of much rumor, but relatively little close study. Her Lotus Year reveals a different Wallis Simpson from the one so often presented. Early 20th century Chinese history is complicated and undeniably confusing, while rarely being the province of royal historians. And so Wallis's China sojourn of the mid-1920s tends to be noted solely in terms of salacious gossip and innuendo rather than her actual experiences of the country. Many nefarious stories surrounding her China sojourn emerged around the time of the threatened abdication, a dozen years after Wallis had left China. They formed the substance of what would come to be known as the China dossier. The elite ruling clique of the English establishment, including the then government of Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin and the British intelligence services, sought to use Wallis Simpson's time in China to denigrate her moral character, making prurient and baseless assertions. These were given weight by the prevailing xenophobic narratives in British society that associated single white women in the Far East with sexual impropriety and were designed specifically to derail her relationship with King Edward VIII. In the first half of the 20th century, images of the heathen Chinese, the fleshpots of the Far East, the yellow peril, and white slavery east of Suez were rampant. The notion that sojourners in the East somehow jettisoned their moral compasses as soon as they stepped ashore reached the common reader and cinema-goer through countless plays, short stories, novels, and films. Travelers in the East, especially white women, went bad out there if they weren't already prone to moral rot and therefore attracted to the Orient in the first place. With this image of China so prevalent in the imagination of audiences on both sides of the Atlantic, it was easy for the British establishment to perpetrate the rumors of Wallis's supposed descent into, take your pick of any or all of the suggested rumors, prostitution, opium addiction, and dope dealing, modeling for pornographic photographs, fronting for a gambling syndicate, endless love affairs, mostly with married men, lesbianism, living as a kept woman, drunkenness, sexual ménage à trois, exotic massage techniques to encourage ejaculation, and, perhaps most famously and endlessly repeated to this day on 1,000 websites fascinated by Wallis, her supposed technique, learned in a low Chinese brothel, of course, of the Shanghai grip. The rumors were used to blacken Wallis's name in London society. Originally, the insinuations were proffered to offer some explanation as opposed to any notion of character, style, sophistication, or fashion sense for Edward VIII's obsession with her. A justification for her hold over him. The lurid rumors hung around Wallis like a bad smell for the rest of her life.